The sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty streets of Sacramento, California, in the summer of 1877. Clara Bennett stood outside the general store, her heart pounding as whispers floated around her like tumbleweeds in the wind. She had just accepted the proposal of Nathaniel Hayes, a widowed rancher with 3 young children, and the town's judgment was swift and unforgiving. Women clutched their reticules tighter as they passed, their eyes filled with disdain. Men shook their heads, muttering about wasted opportunities and foolish decisions. Clara's cousin, Margaret, had been the loudest critic of all. "You could have had banker Thornton Maddox," she'd hissed that morning. "A man of means, standing, a future. Instead, you choose a dirt farmer with 3 mouths to feed that aren't even yours." But Clara had seen something in Nathaniel's gray eyes that spoke of depth and honor. She'd witnessed how gently he handled his children, how he'd removed his hat when speaking to her, how his calloused hands trembled slightly when he'd offered her the simple gold band that had belonged to his late wife. The mockery stung, but Clara lifted her chin and walked toward the wagon where Nathaniel waited, his weathered face anxious. His oldest daughter, 8-year-old Emma, peered from behind his leg, her brown eyes wide with hope and fear. The twins, 5-year-old James and Daniel, wrestled playfully in the wagon bed, oblivious to the town's scrutiny. "Ready?" Nathaniel asked softly, extending his hand. Clara took it, feeling the rough warmth of his palm against hers. "More than ready," she replied, and climbed aboard without looking back at the faces that judged her choice. If this story is touching your heart already, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and if you have ever gone through something similar. Also, tell me what you would like me to improve in future stories. The wagon rumbled along the dusty trail as Sacramento faded into memory. Nathaniel drove with quiet competence, his eyes scanning the horizon with the practiced ease of a man who knew this land intimately. Clara sat beside him, acutely aware of the children behind her. Emma remained silent, watching Clara with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. The twins, however, had no such reservations. "Are you really going to be our new mother?" James asked, his face smudged with dirt. Daniel leaned forward, his small hand touching Clara's shoulder. "Will you make cookies like Mama used to?" The innocent questions pierced Clara's heart. She turned, meeting 3 pairs of hopeful eyes. "I'll do my best," she said gently. "But I'm not trying to replace your Mama. I just want to care for you." Emma's expression softened slightly, and Clara took it as a small victory. Nathaniel cleared his throat. "The ranch is about 3 hours north," he said. "It's not much, but it's honest land. Pine Creek runs through the property, good water year-round. We've got cattle, some chickens, a vegetable garden that needs tending." He paused, his jaw working as if the words cost him something. "I won't lie to you, Clara. It's hard work. The house needs repairs. The children need a firm but loving hand. I'm not a wealthy man, and I never will be." Clara studied his profile, the lines etched by sun and worry, the gray threading through his dark hair. "I didn't say yes because I expected wealth, Nathaniel. I said yes because I saw a good man who needed help, and children who needed love." His hands tightened on the reins, and she saw his throat work with emotion. "I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of that faith," he said quietly. The ranch appeared as the sun began its descent, painting the valley in shades of amber and rose. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Nestled against the foothills, the modest 2-story house stood surrounded by rolling pastures, where cattle grazed peacefully. Pine Creek wound like a silver ribbon through the property, its banks lined with cottonwoods that rustled in the evening breeze. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer heat. A barn and several outbuildings clustered near the house, all in reasonable repair. The garden Nathaniel had mentioned stretched along the south side of the house, rows of vegetables visible even from the road. It wasn't the mansion Margaret had insisted she deserved, but it was beautiful in its simplicity. "It's lovely," Clara breathed, and meant it. Nathaniel's shoulders, which had been tense throughout the journey, relaxed slightly. "Wait until you see inside before you judge," he said, but there was a note of pride in his voice. The children scrambled down from the wagon as soon as it stopped, Emma taking charge of her brothers with practiced efficiency. A gray-haired woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. "About time you got back," she called. "Supper's been ready this past hour." This was Mrs. Murphy, the housekeeper, Nathaniel had mentioned. She'd been with the family since before his wife's death, helping with the children and the house. Her sharp eyes assessed Clara thoroughly, missing nothing from her city dress to her uncertain posture. So, you're the one who said yes, Mrs. Murphy said, her tone neither welcoming nor hostile. City girl. Hope you've got more steel in you than most. Clara met her gaze steadily. I can learn what I don't know, and I'm not afraid of hard work. Mrs. Murphy led Clara through the house, while Nathaniel tended to the horses. The interior was sparse but clean, clearly maintained by careful hands. Despite the wear of daily life, the great room featured a stone fireplace, its mantel decorated with simple wooden carvings. Comfortable chairs, worn but serviceable, sat arranged for conversation. The kitchen was well organized. Pots and pans hanging from hooks, a sturdy table dominating the center. Upstairs, Mrs. Murphy showed Clara to the spare bedroom. This was meant to be a sewing room, she explained, but Nathaniel thought you might want your own space until you're ready. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched Clara deeply. The room was small but pleasant, with an iron-frame bed covered by a patchwork quilt, a washstand, and a single window overlooking the valley. The children's rooms are across the hall, Mrs. Murphy continued. Emma's got her own, the boys share. They're good children, but they test boundaries. Emma's been trying to be the woman of the house since her mother passed 2 years ago. It's too much weight for young shoulders. Clara unpacked her few belongings, her hands trembling slightly. This was real now. She was here, in this house, with these children, married to a man she barely knew. Fear and excitement warred in her chest. Downstairs, she heard Nathaniel's deep voice talking to the children, the sound of chairs scraping as they sat for supper. Mrs. Murphy paused at the door. He's a good man, Nathaniel. Hayes. Lost his way some after Sarah died, but he's finding his footing again. Those children need a mother, and he needs a partner. Whether you're the right one remains to be seen. With that blunt assessment, she descended the stairs, leaving Clara to compose herself before joining the family for her first meal in her new home. Supper was a simple but hearty affair. Roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables from the garden, and apple pie for dessert. Clara sat at the table, acutely aware of 4 pairs of eyes watching her every move. Emma served the food with quiet efficiency, clearly accustomed to the role. The twins ate with the enthusiastic messiness of young boys, while Nathaniel maintained a careful neutrality. The chicken is delicious, Clara ventured, looking at Mrs. Murphy. Thank you. The housekeeper nodded gruffly. Sarah's recipe. Everything in this house has her touch on it. It was a test, Clara realized. They wanted to see if she would be threatened by the memory of the woman who had come before her. I'm glad, Clara said carefully. It must be comforting to have those traditions continue. I'd love to learn her recipes, if you'd be willing to teach me. Emma's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Mrs. Murphy's expression softened fractionally. We'll see, she said, but it was less hostile than before. After supper, Nathaniel took the twins outside to check on the horses, leaving Clara, Emma, and Mrs. Murphy to clear the dishes. Emma worked in silence, her small face serious. Clara washed while the girl dried, their hands moving in awkward coordination. Your mama taught you well, Clara said quietly. You're very capable. Emma's eyes filled with sudden tears, and she turned away quickly, but not before Clara saw them. The girl's thin shoulders shook with suppressed sobs. Without thinking, Clara put down the dish towel and knelt beside her. It's all right to miss her, she said softly. It's all right to be sad and angry and confused about me, being here. I don't expect you to call me mother or forget her, but I hope, maybe, we can be friends. Emma threw her arms around Clara's neck, burying her face in her shoulder, and wept. Clara held her, stroking her hair, letting the grief flow. Mrs. Murphy watched from across the kitchen, and when Clara met her eyes, the housekeeper gave a single approving nod. The next morning, Clara woke before dawn to the sound of roosters crowing. She dressed quickly in her oldest work dress, and descended to the kitchen, determined to prove her worth. Mrs. Murphy was already there, kneading bread dough with practiced efficiency. You're up early, the housekeeper observed. Thought city girls slept past sunrise. Clara rolled up her sleeves. Show me what needs doing. They worked together, and gradually, Clara learned the rhythm of the household. The children needed waking, feeding, and washing. The chickens needed tending, eggs collecting. The garden required watering in the early morning. Cool. Nathaniel came in for breakfast, his shirt already damp with sweat from early chores. I'm riding out to check the northern pasture today, he said, looking at Clara. Would you like to come? The children can stay with Mrs. Murphy. Clara's heart leaped at the invitation. I'd like that very much. They rode out after breakfast, Clara on a gentle mare named Willow, Nathaniel on his sturdy gelding. The ranch was even larger than she'd realized, stretching for acres in every direction. They rode through pastures dotted with cattle, along the creek's winding path, through stands of pine and oak. This is all yours? Clara asked, awed. Nathaniel shook his head. Not exactly. I leased some of it, own the rest outright. It's not the biggest spread in the county, but it's mine, paid for with honest work. As they crested a small rise, a hidden valley spread before them, and Clara gasped. The valley was a perfect bowl of green, fed by springs that created a small pond at its center. Wildflowers carpeted the ground in waves of color. Lupine, Indian paintbrush, and golden poppies. The mountains framed it like a painting, and the morning sun turned everything luminous. This, Nathaniel said quietly, is why I work myself to the bone. This land, this beauty, this peace. I want my children to grow up here, to know that honest labor can build something worth having. A week into her new life, Clara accompanied Nathaniel and the children to town for supplies. She'd hoped the gossip would have died down, but if anything, it had intensified. Women she'd once called friends crossed the street to avoid her. The shopkeeper, Mr. Winters, gave her a pitying look as he tallied their purchases. Heard you married Hayes, he said, shaking his head. Shame that. A girl like you could have done much better. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks, but before she could respond, a smooth voice interrupted. Indeed, Miss Bennett, or should I say, Mrs. Hayes now. Thornton Maddox stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a dark suit that spoke of wealth and refinement. He was handsome in a cold way, with calculating eyes and a smile that never reached them. Such a surprising choice you made. Nathaniel stepped closer to Clara, his hand finding hers. Her choice is made, Maddox, and it's none of your concern. Maddox's smile widened. Of course not. I merely wanted to extend my congratulations, and perhaps offer a word of caution. His gaze swept over Clara. Ranch life is terribly difficult for those unused to hardship. The winters are harsh, the work endless. Children can be such a burden, especially when they are not one's own. If you ever find yourself reconsidering your hasty decision, my door remains open. The threat beneath the politeness was unmistakable. Nathaniel's jaw clenched, but Clara spoke before he could. I've made my choice, Mr. Maddox, and I stand by it. Good day. She turned away, feeling Maddox's eyes burning into her back as they left the store. Outside, Nathaniel helped her into the wagon, his movements tight with controlled anger. That man has wanted this land for years, he said quietly. My wife's death put him in motion, thinking I'd be forced to sell. When I didn't, he changed tactics. Clara understood suddenly. He wanted to marry me to get the land through you. Nathaniel nodded grimly. You're smart, Clara. That's one of the things I admire about you. The incident in town lingered in Clara's mind, adding a new dimension to her understanding of Nathaniel's situation. Over supper that evening, she asked him about Maddox. The children were in bed, and Mrs. Murphy had retired to her cottage behind the main house, leaving them alone by the fire. Thornton Maddox came to Sacramento 5 years ago, with money from back east, Nathaniel explained, his voice low. Started buying up property, especially land with water rights. He owns the bank now, holds mortgages on half the farms in the county. He's been pressuring me to sell for 2 years, ever since Sarah died. Made offers, then veiled threats about loans coming due. Clara's blood ran cold. Do you owe him money? Not a cent, Nathaniel said firmly. I own this land free and clear, but others aren't so fortunate. He's foreclosed on 3 families this year alone. Bought their land for a fraction of its value. There's talk of a railroad coming through, and he's positioning himself to profit from it. And the valley we saw, Clara said slowly. The hidden one. It must be worth a fortune if the railroad comes. Nathaniel nodded. That valley has the best water source for miles. Control it, and you control development in this whole region. Maddox knows it. That's why he's been so persistent. Clara felt anger kindling in her chest. He thought marrying me would give him leverage over you, that you'd be vulnerable through me. I won't let him hurt you, Nathaniel said fiercely. I brought you here to help with the children, yes, but also because I saw something in you that day at the mercantile. Strength, intelligence, a woman who wouldn't be easily manipulated. Their eyes met across the firelight, and Clara felt something shift between them. This wasn't just a marriage of convenience anymore. They were partners facing a common threat. Nathaniel reached for her hand, and she gave it willingly, feeling the calluses that spoke of honest work, the warmth that spoke of human connection. The weeks turned into months, and Clara found her place in the Hayes family through patient persistence. Emma, initially so guarded, began to seek her out with questions about sewing and cooking. The twins treated her with the casual acceptance of young children, climbing into her lap for stories without hesitation. One afternoon, while Clara worked in the garden, Emma appeared with her mother's old recipe book. The pages were worn, stained with use and love, and Clara handled it like the treasure it was. I thought, Emma said, hesitantly, maybe you could learn Mama's recipes from this, so we don't forget. Clara pulled the girl close, tears pricking her eyes. Thank you for trusting me with this. We'll make them together, and I'll teach you everything she knew. That way, her gifts live on through you. They spent the afternoon baking Sarah's famous cinnamon rolls, the kitchen filling with warmth and the scent of yeast and spices. The twins came running at the smell, and soon flour dusted every surface as 4 pairs of hands worked the dough. Nathaniel arrived home to find his house filled with laughter, his children covered in flour, and his wife, for that's what Clara truly was now, presiding over the chaos with joy in her eyes. That night, as Clara tucked Emma into bed, the girl said quietly, I think Mama would have liked you. I hope so, Clara whispered, because I've come to love you all very much. Emma threw her arms around Clara's neck. I love you too. Can I call you Mother? Clara's heart nearly burst. If you want to, sweetheart. If you want to. In the hallway outside, Nathaniel stood listening, his own eyes damp. When Clara emerged, he pulled her close, and they held each other in the dim light. 2 broken people made whole by the courage to try again. It was late October when Maddox's true nature revealed itself. Nathaniel had ridden to town with a load of cattle to sell, and Clara was home with the children when a fine carriage arrived. Maddox emerged, dressed as impeccably as ever, his smile cold beneath his expensive hat. Mrs. Murphy positioned herself between him and the house, her arms crossed. Mr. Hayes isn't home, she said flatly. I'm sure he'll receive you properly if you come back another time. Maddox ignored her, his eyes finding Clara on the porch. Mrs. Hayes, how lovely you look. Ranch life agrees with you, though I notice you've lost that city polish. Such a shame. Clara descended the steps, signaling Mrs. Murphy to stay with the children. What? Do you want Mr. Maddox? He walked past her, surveying the property with proprietary interest. I'm here with an offer. Your husband's stubbornness has become inconvenient. The railroad has confirmed their route, and I need this land. I'm prepared to pay $5,000, 3 times what it's worth. Everything here has a value you can't measure in dollars, Clara said firmly. We're not selling. Maddox's pleasant facade cracked. You don't understand the position you're in. The bank holds loans on supplies purchased by every farmer in this valley. When I decide to call those loans, they'll have no choice but to sell to me. Your husband's friends, his neighbors, will lose everything, unless he cooperates. It was blackmail, pure and simple. Clara felt ice in her veins. Get off our land, she said, her voice shaking with fury. Maddox stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Your husband made a mistake bringing a pretty city girl out here. This valley is harsh, Mrs. Hayes. Accidents happen. People get hurt. Children can be so vulnerable. The threat against the children ignited rage Clara didn't know she possessed. She grabbed the rifle from beside the door, leveling it at Maddox with steady hands. Leave now, or I'll shoot you for trespassing, and I don't miss. When Nathaniel returned that evening, Clara told him everything. His face went white, then red with fury. He threatened the children, he said, his voice deadly quiet. That crosses every line. They spent the night talking, planning. By morning, Nathaniel had decided on a course of action. He rode to every neighboring ranch, calling on old friendships and community bonds. The response was overwhelming. By sunset the next day, 15 ranchers gathered in the Hayes great room, their faces grim. Maddox has been playing us against each other, Nathaniel said, picking us off one by one, but together we're stronger than he is. Tom Brennan, who owned the adjacent property, spoke up. He's already foreclosed on my brother's place, paid a quarter of what it was worth. But what can we do? He owns the bank, has the law in his pocket. Clara stepped forward, her heart pounding. We make his tactics public. We go to the territorial governor, the newspapers in San Francisco. We document every foreclosure, every threat, every illegal action. We make it impossible for him to operate in the shadows. The men looked at her, then at each other. Slowly, recognition dawned. She's right, said Marcus Colton from the Bar M Ranch. We've been playing his game. It's time to change the rules. Over the following weeks, a coalition formed. Clara, with her education and clear handwriting, documented everything. Dates, amounts, testimonies. They sent letters to the territorial capital, to newspapers, to anyone who would listen. And slowly, the tide began to turn. A federal marshal arrived to investigate. A rival bank from Sacramento opened a branch, offering fair loans. Farmers who'd been silent found their voices. Maddox, accustomed to operating unchallenged, found himself on the defensive for the first time. But cornered animals are dangerous, and Clara's courage had made her a target. December brought the first snow, transforming the valley into a winter wonderland. Clara had never seen anything so beautiful. The children built snowmen, had snowball fights, and came inside with red cheeks and bright eyes. Despite the growing tension with Maddox, life on the ranch had found a rhythm. Clara had proven herself capable of ranch work, learning to milk cows, tend chickens, and even help with calving. The other ranchers' wives had begun to accept her, admiring her courage and determination. But it was the hidden valley that became her sanctuary. Nathaniel took her there whenever they could steal a moment, and they would stand together, watching the sun set over the mountains. My grandfather found this place, Nathaniel told her one evening. He was a trapper before this land was properly settled. He said the Miwok people considered it sacred, a place where heaven touched earth. Clara understood why. There was something holy about this space, untouched and perfect. If the railroad comes through, this will all change, she said sadly. Nathaniel pulled her close. That's why we're fighting, not for money or pride, but to protect places like this, to keep them from men who see only dollar signs. The marshal believes he has enough evidence to bring charges against Maddox, Clara said. Fraud, intimidation, possibly more. But Maddox has powerful friends. It might not be enough. Then we'll find another way, Nathaniel said firmly. We've come this far. I won't let him win. They returned to the house as darkness fell, walking hand in hand through the snow. Inside, warmth and family waited. The children were helping Mrs. Murphy prepare supper, their laughter floating through the evening air. This, Clara thought, was worth fighting. For, not just land or money, but this life they'd built together. She'd been mocked for choosing Nathaniel, judged for accepting his children as her own. But she'd found something precious in this valley. Love, purpose, and a place to call home. January brought a blizzard that isolated the ranch for 3 days. They were snowed in completely, the world beyond their windows transformed into an endless white expanse. On the third morning, when the storm finally broke, Nathaniel rode out to check on the cattle and ensure the other ranchers had weathered the storm. He returned at sunset, his face grave. Brennan's barn collapsed under the snow, he reported. No animals hurt, thank God, but he's lost most of his hay. Half the ranchers in the valley are in the same situation. Clara's mind raced. How much can we spare? Everything we safely can, Nathaniel said. We'll get through this together. They spent the next weeks organizing a community effort, redistributing hay, helping rebuild, damaged structures, pooling resources to ensure no one's livestock starved. It was during this crisis that something unexpected happened. The territorial governor, impressed by the community's cooperation and disturbed by Clara's documentation of Maddox's activities, sent an official investigator. The man, Judge Samuel Morrison, was known for his integrity and his hatred of corruption. He arrived in early February, set up temporary offices in the church, and began interviewing witnesses. Clara testified, as did Nathaniel and every farmer Maddox had threatened or ruined. The evidence was damning. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, Maddox was arrested. The charges included fraud, extortion, intimidation, and illegal foreclosures. His assets were frozen pending trial, and the bank was placed under temporary receivership. The town erupted in celebration. People who'd been silent for years found their voices. The community that Maddox had tried to divide came together stronger than ever. That evening, the Hayes family celebrated quietly. Nathaniel gave Clara a simple necklace he'd commissioned, a gold pendant shaped like the hidden valley. "For reminding me that courage isn't the absence of fear," he said. "It's choosing to act despite it." Clara kissed him, surrounded by their children, in the home they'd defended together. Outside, snow fell softly on the valley they'd fought to protect. Spring arrived with explosive color. The hidden valley, which Clara had seen in summer green and winter white, transformed again. Wildflowers carpeted every surface, butterflies danced among them, and the creek ran full with snowmelt. The trial was set for May in Sacramento, and the entire community prepared to testify. But something unexpected happened. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the prospect of prison, Maddox's lawyers negotiated a settlement. He would surrender all fraudulently obtained properties, pay restitution to those he'd harmed, and leave California permanently. The alternative was a trial he couldn't win, and a prison sentence measured in decades. The judge accepted, and just like that, the threat was gone. The properties Maddox had seized were returned to their rightful owners. The bank, now under honest management, restructured the unfair loans. The railroad, when it eventually came through, dealt with the ranchers fairly, and they prospered. But it was the personal transformations that mattered most. Emma, now 10, had grown confident and happy. The twins, 7, were thriving. Mrs. Murphy had become Clara's fierce defender and closest friend, and Nathaniel and Clara had forged a marriage built on mutual respect, shared values, and deep love. One evening in June, as they stood in their hidden valley watching the sunset, Nathaniel said, "Do you remember what people said when you chose me? How they laughed?" Clara smiled. "I remember. They said I was throwing my life away, that I'd chosen poverty and hardship over comfort and status. And now?" She took his hand, placing it over her heart. "Now I know I chose exactly right. They saw a widowed cowboy with children and a struggling ranch. They couldn't see what I saw. This land, this life, this love. The valley was always here, Nathaniel. Not everyone had eyes to see its worth." He kissed her then, softly and deeply, as the sun painted the mountains gold and the valley, spread before them in all its glory. They'd started with judgment and ended with triumph, not because of wealth or status, but because they'd had the courage to choose each other. 10 years later, Clara stood on the same porch where she'd first arrived, watching the valley transform in the evening light. So much had changed, yet the essential beauty remained constant. The ranch had prospered. With the railroad bringing new markets, their cattle brought premium prices. Nathaniel had expanded the herd carefully, never sacrificing quality for quantity. The hidden valley remained protected, a sanctuary they visited often but never exploited. Emma was 18 now, attending teachers' college in Sacramento, her mother's recipe book packed carefully in her trunk. She wrote home every week, her letters filled with dreams of returning to teach in their community. The twins, 15, worked the ranch with their father, growing into strong, capable young men who understood the value of honest work. And there were new additions. Clara's hand drifted to her rounded belly, where their 4th child grew, a daughter. If Mrs. Murphy's predictions proved true, they'd named their first, born a year after Clara's arrival, William. Their second, a daughter they'd called Sarah after Nathaniel's first wife, was now 7. The town that had once mocked Clara's choice now held her in high regard. She'd become a leader in the community, organizing the school board, helping start a lending library, advocating for women's rights to own property. The women who'd crossed the street to avoid her now sought her advice and friendship. That evening, as the family gathered for supper, Nathaniel presented Clara with a gift. It was a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with his careful handwriting. "I've been writing our story," he explained, his weathered face soft with love. "For the children and their children, so they'll know how we started, what we fought for, why this land matters." Clara opened it, tears blurring her vision as she read his account of their first meeting, her brave choice, their battles and triumphs. He'd documented everything. The mockery they'd faced, the threats they'd overcome, the love they'd built. "They laughed at you for choosing me," Nathaniel said quietly. But you saw what they couldn't see. The valley was always here, Clara. You just had courage enough to find it. She looked around at her family, at the life they'd built together. Emma would carry their values into her teaching. The twins would steward this land for another generation, their younger. Children would grow up knowing that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in love, land, and legacy. Thank you, she whispered, for being worth choosing, for showing me that the greatest treasures are often hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to claim them. As stars emerged over the valley and the mountains stood eternal watch, the Hayes family sat together in the home they'd defended, surrounded by the love they'd cultivated. The hidden valley remained, a testament to the truth that real worth isn't always visible to those who measure value in gold. Sometimes the richest treasures are found in choosing love over status, in defending what matters over what's easy, in seeing the valley when others see only dirt and stone. If this story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more emotional, Wild West stories that will touch your soul.